Recent discoveries in paleoanthropology teach us that when talking about the most distant origins of the human species, what is taken for granted today could be denied by new discoveries. But at present, archaeologists agree that Eastern Africa, today's Tanzania, Kenya, and Ethiopia, would be the place of origin of the most archaic hominids. South Africa comes right after, as the second oldest microregion in which hominids lived and evolved. So much so that the major archaeological sites in South Africa have been named the Cradle of Humankind, and under this name they became an UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1999. About 5 million years ago, the southern part of the African continent was geologically unchanged since time immemorial, and has remained so to this day. Millions of years ago, as today, it appeared as an ancient plateau, now called veld, which for tens and tens of millions of years, a time equivalent to infinity for our human criteria, had probably never been touched by earthquakes or other cataclysms. The South African veld of 5 million years ago, however, was more humid and wooded than that of today, with subtropical vegetation and populated by many animals, including several species that were ancestors of the big cats and large herbivores that populate the South African nature reserves of today. And then there were also more evolved primates belonging to the Hominidae family that could stand on two legs. Of these, in South Africa we do not have fossils dating back 5 million years, because the formation of fossils is a process that requires very particular environmental circumstances to be triggered, and even more fortuitous and rare circumstances for fossils to be found and analyzed today. But it is likely that alongside other species of mammals, there also existed here species of hominids that we have not yet discovered, and perhaps will never discover. Fossils of primates millions of years old and belonging to different species have been found in the most varied places, not only in Africa but also in Eurasia. So it is likely that some species of upright bipedal primate existed in South Africa 5 million years ago. Perhaps, who knows, not too dissimilar from those of the genus Australopithecus, who at the same time lived several thousand kilometers farther north in East Africa. But unless new discoveries are made in the future, we will never know for sure. What is certain is that over hundreds of thousands of years, the genetic evolution of many species took its course, creating new animal genera. More than 1 million years after the picture I described above, a new genus of hominids lived from East Africa to South Africa, a genus that is now extinct, but which belonged to the same genetic tribe as modern humans, Australopithecus. But Australopithecines had very little in common with later hominids, apart from the fact that they walked upright. They were very similar to today's bonobos and chimpanzees, with whom they shared a common ancestor just a couple of million years earlier. Today, bonobos and chimpanzees are the animal species most similar to us. And perhaps their only difference was precisely that the various species of the genus Australopithecus walked upright. An Australopithecus fossil discovered in the 1990s at the Sterkfontein archaeological site not far from Johannesburg in northern South Africa, within the prehistoric cave system that is part of the UNESCO Cradle of Humankind World Heritage Site, was difficult to date because it was embedded in rocks of different ages, but a new dating technique in 2015 gave it an age of about 3,670,000 years. This would make it one of the oldest Australopithecus fossils ever discovered, and the oldest ever found in southern Africa. This Australopithecus, whose species is unclear, was nicknamed Littlefoot, at the time of its discovery because the first remains found were 4 small foot bones. Later, thanks to very meticulous expeditions, almost all the other pieces of its fossilized skeleton were found, including the skull, and this makes Littlefoot one of the most complete hominid fossils from such an ancient age. Littlefoot, like all Australopithecians from 3.5 million years ago, walked upright, but when necessary it could also climb tree branches, as its ancestors did or as modern chimpanzees do, because it still had the opposable big toe of its foot, like apes. Time passed, and at the rate of hundreds of thousands of years, generation after generation of Australopithecians succeeded one another on the territories of today's South Africa. But as mentioned, finding remains so ancient is very rare, and so at present we have no other documentation of the hominid inhabitants of South Africa from more than 3 million years ago. Then, however, a new species of Australopithecians spread in South Africa. Australopithecus africanus. The first discovery occurred in 1924. It was given this name by the professor of anatomy Raymond Arthur Dart, who first described it. Australopithecus means nothing other in scientific Latin than ape of the southern hemisphere. Africanus because it was the first fossil ever of the genus Australopithecus ever discovered in all Africa. From the findings, it would seem that Australopithecus africanus was very widespread in today's South Africa, starting from 3 million years ago. In fact, all the discoveries of this species have so far occurred only in South Africa. The fossils of Australopithecus africanus found in the Makakabakasgat Valley, an archaeological site in the northernmost province of South Africa, part of the UNESCO heritage of the cradle of humankind, and about 300 kilometers north of the site where Littlefoot was found, date back to between 2,850,000 and 2,580,000 years ago. Other fossils of the same species have been found in other archaeological sites in different parts of South Africa, dating back to between 2.6 and 2 million years ago. According to recent studies, not only did Australopithecus africanus have a more efficient bipedal walk than previous species of Australopithecines, but from the study of the metacarpal bones, it seems that it had the ability to use hand tools, for example wood or stones, for self-defense and to hit prey. Perhaps better than some primates, even modern ones, such as chimpanzees. However, skull measurements suggest that it had a brain of a similar size to modern chimpanzees. But a discovery made in a cave in the Makapamsgat Valley has been the subject of debate among archaeologists for decades. It is a stone that, due to fortuitous geological modeling, looks roughly like a sort of stylized humanoid face. Since this stone was found in a cave kilometers away from similar natural geological sources, and in the same cave where hominid fossils have been found, it has been hypothesized that one of these hominids would have voluntarily transported the stone to that place, recognizing in the object a humanoid face. These are speculations, however, and are not considered scientifically valid by many archaeologists. All animal species eventually become extinct or evolve. This also happened to Australopithecus africanus. In fact, starting from 2 million years ago, no more fossils of this species have been found. After almost a million years of existence, Australopithecus africanus also left the world to other species. Starting from 2 million years ago, we are certain that different species of hominids lived simultaneously in what is now South Africa. The fossilized remains of 6 skeletons discovered in the Malapa cave between 2008 and 2009 in the same province as the previous discovery, not far from Sterkfontein, date back to around 1,980,000 years ago. These remains would belong to a new species called Australopithecus sediba, which means spring in Soto language. 2 million years ago, these areas appeared as an expanse of wooded valleys and hills. Australopithecus sediba was probably a transitional species between Australopithecines and hominids of the genus Homo. It had a brain of the typical size of an Australopithecine, but the two frontal lobes of the brain were strongly asymmetrical, a typical characteristic of the human species. Our brain developed by using more of the left side, dedicated to language. Anatomically, it was clearly an Australopithecine, but some traits were similar to those of the genus Homo, such as smaller teeth and chewing muscles, longer legs, and a hand with a precision grip. The period around 2 million years ago was probably a very important moment in the diversification of various hominid species. In addition to Australopithecus sediba, other species lived in South Africa at the same time. One of these was Paranthropus robustus. This species whose fossils have been found only in South Africa, according to many scholars, did not belong to the genus Australopithecus, but to the genus Paranthropus, of which several other species have been found in East Africa. Sometimes, some researchers have considered the genera Paranthropus and Australopithecus as synonyms, but this is an open chapter, like many others in paleoanthropology. In any case, Robustus, whether it was an Australopithecine or not, had a more ape-like anatomy than other Australopithecines. This shows us that paleoanthropologists today argue that evolution was not a linear process, but a series of attempts, sometimes failed. The evolutionary family tree would actually be more similar to a bush with many scattered branches. Among the many hominids that populated South Africa around 2 million years ago, some species of which are still waiting to be studied and classified, there was also a new genus, whose origins are still shrouded in mystery, the genus Homo, to which we belong. But that's another story for a future post. This video ends here. Thank you so much for listening. And if you liked it, you can subscribe to the channel and put a like or a comment on the video. Bye!